Welcome to the latest edition of the LL Basketball Roundtable, brought to you by Student Transportation of America in the, I just noticed, it's relatively balmy confines of the studio at lnplancasteronline.com. I'm Mike Gross, and I will be herding these cats.
Nice.
Jason Guarente, who covers boys basketball for our publications, Jeffrey Reinhardt, who covers the girls, and we had quite a night last night. 6 playoff games, the 4 boys quarterfinals, the 2 girls semifinals of the Lancaster Lebanon League playoffs, headed toward championship games coming up in a couple of days. So we're going to break down all of that. I guess let's start with the girls because they're closer to the finish line here. Lebanon 42, Lancaster Catholic 37 in really sort of what we think of as the heavyweight title fight of our league. So, Ryan, you witnessed that one.
Lebanon wins on a big second half. Catholic set the tone in the first half. They played really well, defended well, kept Harrison off the glass, kept Correa relatively in check. So Catholic got up by like 6 in the first half, led by 4 at half. And then Lebanon came out in the third and answered the bell. Correa put her foot down and said, all right, I'm going to take over now.
Which is among her many gifts.
Yeah.
She has a sense of the moment.
She does. She knows when to kind of put the pedal down and force the issue. And she came out and scored 16 in the second half, 9 in the third quarter. Lebanon goes 9-0, got up by 10 on a 3 by Correa. Catholic hung with them, had a 6-0 in the fourth. They got it to 2 kind of late. And then Lebanon, Correa made another bucket. Harrison made a couple free throws. But it was a great game. It was a heavyweight battle. It was a battle royale. It was the game we kind of expected. And Lebanon won again. They just beat them at Catholic 2 weeks ago, and they won the rematch in the semis. So Lebanon goes to the final for the 3rd year in a row. They've lost the last 2.
And if it's hard to beat a good team twice, it's harder to beat a good team 3 times.
How about that?
But that's Lebanon's assignment in the final because of the Township Northern Lebanon.
Now, that was a great game. Township Northern Lebanon figured that would be a grinder, 1 possession at a time kind of a game, and it was. Double OT. Northern Lebanon shoulda, coulda won. Vikings had a shot at the buzzer of the first OT, and Saoirse Phillips, God bless her, had a layup at the end of the first OT, and it came up short. So they go to the second OT, and I thought Northern Lebanon kind of ran out of steam a little bit. Township made some plays. Brooke Weaver had 23. She played great. She made some shots. So Township wins. So they get a home game in the championship.
There's no quotation marks around that.
No, they'll be the visitor on the bracket. I don't know if they're going to go in the visiting locker room, but Township gets a home game. 11th final for Township. They've won 7 of them. Their last one was in 2014. Yep. And that's a rematch. Like you said, they played 2 times in the regular season. Lebanon won both. They just played a week and a half ago at Lebanon, and that's the night Correa got her 2,000th point. So they know each other really well. We've had Lebanon circled here since December. They've wanted to win this. This has been their goal since last February. So Thursday night, 7 o'clock at Township.
Be there. Aloha.
Be there. Aloha.
Jason, perhaps the strangest, at least in the box score game of this, not only the playoffs, but of this year and maybe of many years. Let's talk a little bit about Cedar Crest and Lancaster Country Day.
Wow.
So Cedar Crest, the Section 1 champs, down 11 at halftime.
After scoring 2 points in the second quarter.
Wow.
And my brain is thinking, would this be the greatest upset in the history of the LL League basketball tournament?
I think it would.
Maybe.
And then Cedar Crest mercy ruled Lancaster Country Day in the second half.
Wow.
Scored 59 points in the second half.
Those 30-6 second or third quarter runs tend to be damaging. And that's kind of Cedar Crest's season, though. At their best, they are exceptional, and not at their best, they are vulnerable. They've lost some games to lesser teams, but they can still win the tournament. And we saw both halves of that in the quarterfinal round.
And their opponent will be, and Jason's not surprised by this, but I think a lot of people, this was a little bit of an eye-opener, Conestoga Valley, which edged 2-loss Manheim Central by 1 point last night.
I'd say mildly surprised. I mean, I would not have picked CV, but I don't think
Right.
it's a shocker.
Yeah.
They played the second game of the season, and CV was ahead going into the fourth quarter by a point. CV lost by 6. So, I mean, it's not a big gap between 20-2 and 12-10 in this year's LL League. It's really up for grabs. We tried to say that all along. And CV has a transformational player in Demir Salisbury, who can break down the defense, who is very difficult to guard, who forced a foul in the final seconds of a tie game and made 1 of 2 free throws to beat one of the best defensive teams in the LL.
Right, that's true.
On a home court they have never lost on. So, and he has good players around him. Sawyer Espinshade was a double-digit scorer as a sophomore. He's a junior now. Toby Schaub hits threes. Grayson Fisher would be a double-digit scorer on a different team. Cameron Bear is a really good player. He's only a sophomore. So they have a lot around him. And if Demir stays with that team, they're almost all back next year. So they can grow together, and he can rise to the moment. He just has a level of play
That's something to say that about a freshman. That's something.
he just has a higher level than almost anyone else in the league. And that's what we saw.
And
Two
he's
things.
14, and he's 14.
Yeah, he's 14
Yeah.
until the summer.
Tommy Smith told me the other week, he said Conestoga Valley's playing as well as anybody right now. They're dangerous. And the other thing is, we should just point out that Salisbury is the son of Dustin Salisbury, who is one of the best players in the history of the Lancaster Lemon League. Played at Temple, played pro basketball for a long time. Good bloodlines there. Now, let's talk about the 2 games that Jason and I covered last night in the quarterfinals of the boys' side. Warwick with a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter barely hangs on. Octorara, scrappy, gutty, God love him,
Pretty gutty.
had a shot to win it at the end. They have a junior guard, Chase Fetro, who I think is their 4th leading scorer. He went nuts at the end. He had 14 in the fourth quarter. And he had a really tough 3, a fall away long 3 at the end that bounced off the rim, and there was a little scramble. They actually had 2 shots to win it at the end. Warwick can't be pleased, and I know they're not pleased with the way they handled the fourth quarter, although they played well before that. This is an unusual game. A lot of stuff at the rim. 22 block shots. Your Majesty Washington, 10. I had him for 10 block shots. It was hard to tell. There was a lot of swatting going on, and it was hard to keep that stat. But anyway, Warwick gets through to the semis, where they will face a team that I think we, maybe above all the others in the league, we would have expected to be at this stage, Lancaster Mennonite.
Lancaster Mennonite's first LL tournament win since 2017. You wouldn't think
Wow, how
that
about
because
that?
they make it almost every year.
State championship just a couple of years ago.
And we talked about that, but that was the year Camden Hurst was hurt and he wasn't quite full strength, and they
right.
played
That's
the
right.
eventual champ Hempfield.
right.
It just didn't work out. But 22 appearances in the LL tournament, have never won it, have only been to 1 final, and now they're in the semis against Warwick. Chase Hurst, their point guard, Camden's younger brother, a 3-year starter, state champion, a 2-time district champion, one of the best players in the league.
It seems like he's scoring more lately in addition to everything else.
And he's starting to get a 3-point shot.
Yeah,
He's
okay.
hit, he's hit maybe 12 or 13 of those. If he starts hitting threes,
He's a tough cookie.
My goodness. And he's a great defender. He makes all the right decisions with the ball. He absolutely makes them go, and he's so tough because he's the youngest of 4 boys, and he's been in those backyard battles, and they can win this thing. And you don't say that about a Section 4 team often, but I think Warwick against Mennonite is just a fascinating game because Warwick is so talented, and Mennonite, it's their, they feel like it's their time, even though they have another year. All these kids are back next year, so
Yeah.
it's really interesting Final Four because CV's only won twice ever. Last time was 09. Mennonite's never won. Warwick hasn't won since 1988.
88. How about that?
So other than Cedar Crest,
Which won it last year.
and has won 4 in the last 10, it's the teams in it would be special to them because it's been a long wait.
So again, this is a semifinal doubleheader tomorrow, Wednesday at Conestoga Valley. Cedar Crest against CV, Warwick against Lancaster Mennonite. Ryan, let's preview the final a little bit.
Okay.
And then anything else you got, good in the order type
Okay,
stuff.
certainly. As mentioned, Lebanon won both against Township. They know each other really well. I covered both games. The one down here in Neffsville, Neffsville, 51-22. Lebanon played great that night, blew their doors off. A little closer at Lebanon, it was 49-39. There was a lot of hoopla that night because Correa got her 2,000th. So everybody was kind of paying attention to that. And oh, by the way, Township kind of hung around and made some shots, and it was like a 6-point game in the fourth quarter, and Lebanon kind of held on at the end. Lebanon's big three, I'm not like a big three guy, but they're big three. Correa averages 20, Harrison averages 15, Olive Brandt averages 13. Those three have been really, really good. Harrison is a matchup nightmare. She had fouls against Catholic in the semifinals, but survived it. She's been so good in the key. Grabbed her 1,000th rebound the other night, which is a really cool stat.
Yeah, that's
a great
really.
stat. That's unbelievable. Township, grinder team, mostly athletes. Not a lot of basketball kids. They have 4 Division I players in other sports, lacrosse, field hockey, etc.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
They just kind of run and chase, and they pride themselves on getting on the floor, taking charges, boxing you out, and getting boards. They want to play in the 30s and the 40s. Lebanon wants to play in the 50s and the 60s. So bit of a contrasting style here. Township has to not let Correa set the pace, and they can't let Harrison dominate on the boards.
And Correa is one of the hardest players probably in the history of the league to stop from doing what she wants to do.
You can't press and trap Lebanon because she'll dribble through it and she'll throw it over the top to Harrison, or she'll outlet to Brandt, who can also zigzag and get
really
through.
hard to ugly it up against them.
It is. And again, in the semis, Correa came out in the third and she said, I'm calling game here. I'm going to play. I'm going to get in the key and shoot pull-up jumpers. I'm going to hit a 3. I'm going to get fouled and set the tempo. So tempo game. Can Lebanon get it and go? Can Township grind it, muck it up, play in the 40s? Interesting matchup. Edge to Lebanon, but that's why they play the game.
Jason,
Go.
what do you got?
One thing we didn't mention, CV gets the semifinal on his home floor.
Home floor,
So we have the same thing we have with Township, where we have league playoff games on home floors. Not the greatest, not ideal.
Not a fan. Not a fan of that.
And one other thing, John Shea, Anvil Cleona,
he's really good.
got his 1,000th point in his final high school game.
Oh.
Needed 18. Scored 17 in the first half, scored 1 in the second half, and got 18. Exactly 1,000.
What a year for that kid.
Wow.
And a 1,000-yard rusher in football. I don't know how many 1,000-yard rusher and 1,000-point basketball scorers are in the history of the league, but it's a short
Can't be
list.
a
That's a
whole-
great nugget,
I
Jason.
didn't even realize who that was until you said
Well done.
football stuff.
What a year for that kid. He had a great year in football.
Yeah, he is a good athlete.
That's awesome. Good for him.
Kid. All right, gang, that's it. Big stuff coming in the next couple of days. We'll be back next week to break it down. But for now, this has been the LL Basketball Roundtable, brought to you, as always, by Student Transportation of America. For Jeffrey and for Jason and for Mike, we'll see you later.